Good morning, afternoon, and or evening everyone, and welcome to another SSCAIT report. This is Choboswaggins, aka Jealous on Team Liquid, and today we will be looking at recommended replays of both AI and human versus AI games. To start us off, we have Crazio here, spawning at the 12 o'clock position on Python against Eric Hammer, who spawned at the 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock position on Python as well, of course, as the Teal Zerg. So this replay was recommended to us as a interesting TVZ by the author of Crazio. We'll be seeing a few games of Crazio's today. Crazio being a unique and very strong Terran AI, so I'm interested to see what happens here. We have an early SCV going out, and it looks like it's going for a BBS in the middle. We should be expecting to see, a second SCV making its way towards the middle here. This was definitely a popular strategy on Python, this location right here in particular being practically made for building proxies. I've always wondered whether the map author had intentionally done so, both here and here. The SCV going back home actually, deciding not to scout. Usually what you do is each building SCV scouts in each direction, but I guess it has a designated SCV scout already out on the map. Slightly less efficient in terms of economy, and actually the Zerglings coming out now, the SCV getting spotted and it targeted, the Marine also running back home in order to defend itself. This is a tough situation. Pool first builds generally stronger against BBS. And let's slow it down a little bit just to keep up with the action here. We have an Overlord being pressured, 3 Zerglings chasing this Marine, these Zerglings chasing this Marine, and this already shows us the possibilities of AI versus AI when multitasking is essentially a non-issue. One Marine goes down here, another one is coming back home here to defend, is going to draw these 3 Zerglings away, and another Marine out, and another Marine out, and look at, I mean, I just don't have words for how crazy it is to look at this, because it's so far above anything that a human would ever be capable of. Look at this triangulation, this triangle movement, famous from the Pimpus Plays video, where three Marines take out a lurker, and now more Zerglings streaming in, more Marines being produced. There's action on both sides. The Marines trying to run away from the Zerglings on every side, but it should be noted that they are keeping the Zerglings occupied. Probably the best play would have been for the Zerg to run by and to take out the defenseless main here. But it itself does not have much defenses at home as well. So this is a full-on battle of the AIs in terms of their control. I mean, these 2 Marines, they're already sort of stationary here. They weren't ready to assist their teammates in battling the Zerglings here, and actually there's quite a concerning number of Zerglings here moving up, and even more actually moving up to the main base of the Terran. No defenses here whatsoever. The Terran in the meantime has decided to just chill over here. And actually the Zerglings are going back to maybe take out the barracks here. Is that the play? I'm guessing it might be. The number of Marines certainly not enough to handle this great surround from the Zerg player, but the AI is capable of avoiding the surrounding situation. It is again splitting up into 3s, leading different Zerglings into different directions, keeping them occupied. It just goes to show how good movement AI can stall what seems like an inevitable loss. In this situation, it's almost I don't want to say a build order loss, but it's definitely a build order disadvantage. And this barracks is now burning because of the pressure from the Zerglings. There's quite a few of them out on the map, but there is, let me see it to make sure, is this a factory? Yes, it is. Factory is coming up. 3 hatcheries, 3 sunkens for the Zerg player, and gas just now coming up. Quite standard follow-up to such an early pool. And in this situation, it's a very great understanding of the dynamics in this matchup, really. The sunken colonies, of course, preventing any pressure from the 2 barracks should the Zergling AI fail to maintain it. The Sunkens also help against any mech follow-up, which is likely to come from one base after 2 proxy barracks. We do have 1 vulture out. It seems like we are adding on a starport as well. And interestingly enough, also an academy as well, probably for the Comsat station. SCVs now being pulled to protect the vulture and the building. I'm not so sure about needing to pull this many SCVs. Just the vultures alone would have been enough to handle this pressure, but I'm guessing a proactive approach is better than a reactive approach in this case, according to the bot author. The vulture getting repaired well here. SCVs blocking the Zerglings from getting to the vulture itself. Vulture finally does go down, and actually there's only 1 remaining now, but all of the Zerglings have been dealt with. Let's see how the Zerg is following up with this. They have a creep colony behind. They're saving the minerals. This is something that I want to note. A lot of human players, they instantly turn their colonies into some form of either sunken or spore, but there's actually no merit in doing so unless it's necessary. You'll see sometimes pro gamers having 1 sunk and some regular creep colonies awaiting the pressure from the enemy, and in this case the Zerg Eric Hammer is doing just that with the colony behind its minerals, most likely going to be a spore to defend against the Wraith that is coming out now. Overlord looks like is going to try to take another peek at the Terran player to see what is happening. SCVs repairing SCVs, trying to keep everyone alive. So now the Overlord and the Zerg should be aware of the presence of Wraiths. I mean, they did see this starport coming up. It shouldn't be a surprise to them, but maybe they were suspecting that it would be a dropship, which this Sunken is what is telling me, is that it is suspected a dropship. 1 tank, 1 vulture against 8 Zerglings. 8 Zerglings should be able to win this match, but the micro from Krasio too strong, and Eric Hammer, recognizing it, runs away for a moment, but now is lured back in by the vulture here. The vulture going to be worth its weight in gold in this interaction. Another Wraith out, or is this the same one? It might be the same one. It takes out the Overlord that is scouting from the back. Turret's already up for the Terran player. Interestingly enough, kind of far away from its mineral line. This is something that pro gamers do, but it's usually, I believe, safer to have them in your mineral line because you can have easy access to repair. And it should be noted that the Terran player has been, I mean, despite having Comsat, has been playing mostly blind up until this point, not aware of what the Zerg player is going for. Now, the Wraith is going to find out that there are a lot of sunken colonies. There is a Spire coming up. There's actually no gas being mined at this moment. Very low gas for the Zerg player if they're going for a Spire. It leads me to believe that they're not intending to use the Spire for Mutalisk pressure. They're actually just using it for air defense with Scourge potentially. 3rd base now up, long transfer of drones going there just as the 2nd base for the Terran comes up. And I believe that, quite frankly, despite the positional advantages, you know, having air when your opponent does not have anti-air, having distracted the Zerg, in this case, the Zerglings could have won the game, but if it was human players, I would say that there's a moral advantage to, or a psychological advantage for the Terran player just because of the fact that they survived in a build order losing scenario. Now the Zergling is running in, recognizing that the Terran siege tank cannot defend itself adequately against them running in. However, it does unsiege and run away after losing the Vulture, and the Marines continuing to micro around these Zerglings, playing with their food. I believe these Zerglings are actually not speed upgraded. It looks like, yeah, it does not seem to be speed upgraded, and that is contributing to the success of the Marines and mech from the Terran player. The drones are getting pummeled down here, and as well as the sunken colony in the main base. The spore colony is unfortunately not placed adequately to defend against the gas. Zerglings now streaming in some more of them. Still only 1 siege tank, so very sparse defense from this Terran player, but there are Marines and a bunker coming forward for the Terran player. Zerglings still unable to handle the control from the Terran player, running away from the siege tank after seeing the bunker surrounding this Marine quite nicely, and the medic as well. Great control there. Is it going to take the siege tank out as well? I struggle to believe so. They're going to actually focus on the medics, interestingly enough. The medics did not seem to be healing with each other. It went down quite quickly. And now a siege push is on the way for Krasio. This is one of Krasio's strengths in my experience, is the fact that it can push quite convincingly. But now Mutalisk actually surprised me by being out on the map already. I mean, the gas is still low for the Zerg player. I guess they managed to get enough for a couple of Mutalisks, but there is sufficient anti-air defense in the middle of the line here. The pressure is not going to be allayed at the front. It's going to continue slowing down the siege push by forcing pressure, and this is something that human players rarely do. They need to focus on making the siege tank siege up on siege, siege up on siege, and but you generally want to do that without any losses. You want to pressure them in a way that forces that sieging and unsieging pattern without incurring too heavy of losses. It slows down the Terran push that is inevitable, and it allows, in particular in this case, Zerg to drone up heavily and continue their economy. We are seeing 3 base with 3 gas now for the Zerg player. The Wraiths definitely did way more damage than I anticipated because of the fact that it should have probably made some Scourge here. I don't think that there was cloaking available for the Terran player. No, there was not. Scourge would have been a great way to handle that pressure, but I guess the AI decided it was not enough pressure to justify wasting the gas when the Mutalisk pressure is the winning play here. 2 factories, 2 barracks, no Goliaths, just a handful of Marines. This is something that a stack of Mutalisks could easily handle, even with 4 turrets there. Now we finally have Goliaths out on the map. They do not have the range upgrade. Is it on the way? It looks like... Is that what that is? I think that is. Yes, it is. The range upgrade now coming in. This is an interesting play for sure. We're going for 3 factories now. This is kind of... I mean, this was recommended because of its interesting play, and it's really crazy to see how the AI adapts in a kind of scramble scenario where its initial build order of BBS was not only discovered, but also effectively build order countered. The micro keeping it alive up until now, and now Valkyrie is out on the map. Interesting choice, and definitely a good one against these Mutalisks. Valkyrie micro, infamously difficult to do. Great micro from the Mutalisks as well, though, spreading around in order to avoid getting hit by too many of the volleys from the Valkyrie. Look at that spread. Oh my goodness, so beautiful. Something that is only a dream for human players. And in the meantime, the Zerg player is now taking its 6th base. Now, I can't believe I missed these. Getting multiple bases, definitely the play to get to beat a Meching Terran. Meching Terrans, of course, requiring a critical mass of tanks and Goliaths before they can move out. In this case, supplemented by a couple Marines and medics, because of the fact that Italy had invested in that play. 3 factories, looks like it's going to be 4 factories, 3 barracks. So it's going to be an interesting mix of biomech as well as air. This Valkyrie is likely to go down. It does. This Valkyrie incredibly low. And eventually this Zerg player is going to need to invest greater into army. It does have the worker advantage. 58 workers is probably around the optimal amount that you would need in order to face a Meching Terran at this point, especially with the number of bases. You're expected to lose 1 or 2 bases, but this Mutalisk control here failing the Zerg player. The Goliaths probably glitching out the control from the Mutalisks, and now the army has to run back home. Only 15 supply of army now on the map. Generally what you would want at this stage of the game is most likely either Ultras or Hydras in order to deal with this mech push, because both Mutalisks and Zerglings melt so quickly to the mech. It's been a recent topic of discussion on Team Liquid strategy forums for Brood War. There was a player who asked, how do I handle mech? And the answer is there's really a lot of options. But in all those scenarios, what you want is to have more bases, which, check, we do have here. And you want to have more army, which in this case we do not. 13 supply against 44 supply, and this push, even though it doesn't look that scary, has already destroyed a large number of Zerg units and is making its way towards the natural Zerg. Even if this base goes down, however, this game is far from over. The Zerg now going up to 7 bases, if I'm counting correctly. Valkyries making their return here. Would have been nice to see some SCVs pushing with this as well to make repairs, build turrets, maybe a bunker if the bio production is continuing. No, it's not. There's 4 barracks, but no bio production. I guess the Terran deciding that it's an option to hold onto for later, but not utilize at the moment. These siege tanks are going to pummel down these sunken colonies. Looks like there's not going to be much resistance here. However, there are still so many Zerg bases left, and all I'm waiting for really is for some more army production. We have 1 army from these Zerg here, 1,900 minerals here, 3 army, but it looks like it's mostly Scourge trying to take out these Valkyries, which they do so. Drones running around everywhere being the greatest hemorrhage of minerals and supply here. It seems like being constantly taken down by patrolling random units. And in the meantime, behind this push, the Terran did the sensible thing and expanded 2 times, taking another gas as well, which is essential for any mech play. A lot of Scourge here. They're going to try to chase down this vessel. Will they get it? Great Micro. Are we going to see it get taken down? Oh, the tension. The Scourge historically have bad AI on their own, and being in this position as the bot author must be so difficult to see because of the fact that the real best way to have Scourge actually hit something is you have to move command past the target and then a command on top of it. Vessels do move slower than Scourge, so it would have been the winning tactic here. Unfortunately, the Scourge were just chasing it all the way until they got taken out by stray units here and there from the Terran. And this match is just insane. I mean, we do have still Mutalisks. I wonder what upgrades they have. They actually has 3 armor on the way now for the Zerg player, and only 1 Carapace for air units. The Mutalisks not really engaging all that well against this M&M Goliath force, even though there are not that many of them. Probably should have focused on limiting the number of Marines out on the field and then taking out the Goliaths, but instead just running around taking a lot of damage. The vessel is back to cause more havoc. The siege tanks have finally made their way into the main base of the Zerg player, and I just realized that I've been casting this at times 1 speed because there's just been non-stop action from the start. This is a great replay. Thank you for the suggestion, Krazio. The vessel finally goes down with a great attack from the Mutalisks. The Mutalisks are now multi-stacked. There's so many of them here, but the numbers are dwindling so fast without actually doing any damage. Eric Hammer definitely needs to review the way that it engages with M&M Goliath masses here. No damage done at all, and all those Mutalisks get shredded. Now 73 army against 12 from the Zerg player. Despite its heavy eco advantage and big bank, it doesn't seem like it has an answer for this biomech push that has been going on. Now we have 5 barracks pumping, 4 factories, and a starport adding Valkyries. Probably the most versatile combination of units and production buildings that you can have against Zerg. I mean, he has a little bit of everything, Krazio does. It's the kitchen sink approach, Valkyries, Goliaths, M&M for handling the Mutalisks, siege tanks to push the static defense buildings and kill the Zerglings. And it just makes me think that maybe going for Hydralisks or Ultralisks would have been the better play here. I mean, given this economy, of course the gas is low because of the constant hemorrhaging of Mutalisks, but now all the tech structures are going to go down. It's going to be interesting to see if the Zerg opts to replace them and where they will do so. There are a limited amount of defenses here, and it's impossible to keep up with everything. Look at this Vulture here. It laid these mines. It probably killed a bunch of these drones, found the perfect place to be, takes out another drone here. This constant drone transferring, again, as I mentioned earlier, being a great hemorrhage of units and supply for the Zerg player. And now the push has rerouted to the 9 o'clock base of the Zerg player, going to start taking them down 1 by 1. Looks like Eric Hammer is not... it is actually returning its tech buildings, but a little bit too late. Would have been a fantastic move to anticipate the fact that it was going to lose the spawning pool and this layer and start adding those tech structures earlier to this base. Another thing that Zerg players do, in this case maybe not as viable because the Zerg player was on such a low base count due to the early pressure. You place your tech structures like one per base. Like you have a spawning pool here, a Hydralisk den here, a Spire here, and that way you never lose more than one per push. The obvious caveat to that is the fact that you lose, it's harder to defend all the bases, but it is obviously assuming that you have a sufficient army to control the map and contest presence. But with the 100 supply difference for the Terran player in advantage against the Zerg player here, I think that the writing is on the wall, and the tech will get taken down, and the bases as well. And it was a fantastic game from both players here. Both Krazio and Eric Hammer. Great, interesting early game shenanigans, BBS versus early pool builds. Something that you rarely progress to this point in the game after such an opening. So props to both Krazio and Eric Hammer for their play. As you can see, Krazio now doing a tremendous amount of pressure here. Siege Tanks probably took out at least one of those Marines. It would be interesting for AI to recognize that splash damage is doing damage to their own units when they're right next to the building being attacked, but I guess with the presence of medics it's not as important, and this game is practically over. And good game, well played by both competitors. Great way to start us off, Krazio versus Eric Hammer. Thank you for the suggestion, and let's move on. This is another Krazio game, but this time we are facing off against a human player from the Schnail ladder, SCHNAIL, which is the StarCraft Human and AI League, run by Sonko and others. Well, run by Sonko, supported by others, particularly the bot authors, who you have seen throughout these games. Cinder's here at the bottom left, spawning as the white Protoss, and Krazio spawning on the top left as the purple Terran. Now, Circuit Breakers was the famous, I guess almost, I don't want to say expansion, but improvement on Fighting Spirit. I mean, even that is kind of questionable because both maps are unique, they have different balances, but it was seen as the new standard, and I believe it came out in 2010, which is a year after Fighting Spirit. The reason why is because it has a much more interesting map features. You have double bridges here, you have the high ground position here, so basically effectively 3 ways to enter your opponent's area. Mineral only over here, but with a gas base here. Now, what is particularly interesting about this map is that there are positional balance situations that need to be accounted for. In this case, the Terran pushing south is at a disadvantage because of the wide open space in the middle. Protoss army can flank from all directions. They can run around this way, they can run around this way from the high ground. It is much more difficult to push vertically on this map than it is to push horizontally. And horizontal pushing also nets you this mineral only, this gas only as you push across to your opponent. Looks like the Protoss player is going for a 12 Nexus and doing a cross scout. The cross scout is going to miss apparently for now, which is not a good look for the Protoss player. But the reason for the cross scout is because you want to find out how early the pressure will arrive at your base. It's going to be a 13 Nexus actually, maybe a little bit of delay for our Protoss player, but definitely a very confident play. In the meantime, the Terran player is Krazio is going for much more standard opener with looks like barracks, gas, going to be a factory coming up. It's checking for proxies actually, which is an interesting play. It does cost some minerals, but it is safer. It's better safe than sorry in this case. And knowing that getting to the late game will bring out the greatest advantages for the AI because of its superhuman control, maybe that is why it opts to do that. I mean, at the expense of minerals, you are secure from proxies. However, unfortunately, this has been a macro opening, a very greedy macro opening from Cinders 01, the human player here. Going for the gas already. We're going to expect to see a Cybernetics core coming up now. Pull the probe off of the gas to make that. That's a great play. Heads up play. Probes being made, and I'm getting the impression that this 12 Nex is going to be successful. It looks like there's a bunker coming up. Let me double check Yes, bunker coming up at the front. This is something called a bunker expand, which is quite meta right now, as far as I know. It is a solid play. You follow up with your usual mech composition, but you got your expansion just a little bit earlier and safer, without having to go for something like a siege expand or a full FD push before placing that command center down. The factory is complete, but the command center needed the minerals first to be made. The expansion now from the Protoss player is complete. Seems to me that this player is a little bit slower than maybe some of our top players, but they do have the advantage in build order with the early expansion. They do already have a Dragoon coming out. Skipping Zealot entirely, which is actually quite risky, but maybe they read the situation well enough to understand that they had the time to do so. No second gateway or third gateway or robo coming up at this point. Very scant on production facilities for the Protoss player, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. We do have a siege tank coming out, and I'm guessing that is going to be siege mode. Yes, it is. Siege mode going to be essential to defending this main base after the bunker is ineffective. After the point at which the bunker is ineffective at preventing aggression from the amount of Dragoons that the Protoss players likely have, and the Protoss player responding to the fast expand build with an expansion of their own, I'm guessing here. Are they going to go for the mineral only, or are they going to go for the gas base? This might be telling about what they're going to go for going into the late game. 3 gases essential for going for carriers. Well, not essential, but very useful. And for faster Arbiter tech. Still only 1 gateway. The Dragoon's now coming forward to see what is going on in the natural of the Terran player. The Terran player, recognizing the Dragoons are there, sieging up it forward, is going to start pummeling these Dragoons. The Dragoon gets lured into the bunker, takes a little bit of damage. Nope, does not take any damage on its main hull. This one, however, is actively weakened, and now the Dragoons are going to play the containing game. This is how you try to prevent the Terran player from securing these 2 bridges, which generally makes it easier for them to take this third base, generally makes it more difficult for the Protoss player to circumnavigate or push in general into the Terran base, because of the fact that these bridges are narrow. They are death traps, and Dragoons are famously bad at crossing narrow spaces or going up ramps. So a little bit of indecision here from the Terran player. Let's see what they're producing. They're building another factory. They're building some SCVs. That is all expected. We finally have a robotics facility coming up from the Protoss player and additional gateways, which would be crucial at this point in the game. The Terran player continuing to play safe. I mean, they have an academy, just now adding the ComSat station. Maybe a little bit late, but probably recognizing the fact that with such an opening, the Protoss would not have any air units or Dark Templar at this juncture. The Protoss running in to take out this siege tank is not being repaired, and that was a good pick off. 2 Dragoons for 1 siege tank is a trade that I would always personally take in this case. The only risk, however, is, of course, you don't know what the Terran player is doing. If instead of Academy and Armory and turrets, this had been a 5-fact follow-up or a 4-fact follow-up, there's a famous 50 worker push that Haya did quite a few years ago on, in the second era of Brood War. It was what he would do is make about 50 workers on 2 bases, and then he would stop producing workers altogether, have no intention of getting to the late game, and he would do a 4-factory push to punish the greedy Protoss. In this case, probably not the best way to go because the Protoss player already has the 3rd base. Interestingly, going for 2 forges here instead of any advanced tech. This is kind of a more of an old school approach to PvT, not going for any sort of advanced tech in the sense of, going for quick arbiters, carriers, or even Templar. This is just going for upgrades. Upgrades not that tremendous for PvT in this matchup. The only upgrade really mattering it being the attack upgrade. However, some players in the community have favored this approach, notably Evil Eye, who was one of the most successful D-rank players in the Coach Pupil League and beyond, going for this double forge approach, so maybe inspiration coming from there. And still no advanced tech, no Citadel, no Stargate, you know, so this is quite interesting. It looks like it's going to be pure Dragoon production for now. I mean, there's no point in building Zealots until you have the Citadel up and running. However, the amount of Dragoons has been sufficient to keep the Terran player penned in. There's going to be only 4 factories now. This factory, notably, probably taking up way too much space and is going to limit the amount of production facilities, sorry, that the Terran has. Protoss finally adding that Citadel. But double upgrades pumping for the Terran as well. Upgrades much more powerful for the Terran player in this matchup than they are for the Protoss player. And perhaps looking to hit a sort of timing with maybe 1-1-5 factory push. It looks like that might be the play here as we see another factory coming up. Actually, there's another factory coming up. What? Oh, that's a barracks? Huh. I guess maybe recognizing that this barracks is in danger. I'm quite confused. Maybe, again, opting for a biomech play or transition. In the meantime, the Protoss player taking the bottom right main as well. Still some idle probes here and there, but doing quite well. Nice building placement here, but it is preventing these gateways from producing Dragoons, which as we discussed earlier, is the only unit that it makes sense to make until you have speed coming up. Do we have speed on the way? No, not yet. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like we already have it. I'm a little bit confused by this because is it on the way? I guess it's considered upgrades, not research. Either way, the Zealot upgrade is on the way, and now Zealot production is going to be key in order to stop this trickle of Terran units. Production meter showing that the Protoss is well capable of keeping up in terms of macro. 30 supply against the Terran, which is something that you would expect to see at this juncture. The Terran suspiciously has quite a few minerals floating. I'm thinking maybe it ran out of places to place its factories. If it had 2 or 3 more factories at this point, the Protoss player would definitely be in danger. Even with the 9 gateways that it has, having about 6 or 7 factories at this juncture would be enough to push back the Protoss. But it looks like it's not going to be the case here. Ray Gang in add-on. And the constant sound of sieging and unsieging is pushing the Dragoon slowly out of its natural, and it's looking like the Protoss player is more intent on keeping the Terran player penned in as it expands its macro advantage, taking the 4th base here, still not mining, but still doing quite well to maintain that eco lead. Now the APM is going up. We are floating 200 APM. Zealot production is alive. Both players kind of lacking in production at this time. Looks like Krasio got supply blocked for a moment there. Looking at the armies, we have 14 Zealots, 20 Dragoons. That should be enough to take on this army, but it all depends on positioning, especially on what I would call a texture-heavy map like this one, with all these bridges, ramps, high grounds, low grounds. It is definitely a question of how well the Protoss player reacts to the position of the Terran player. In this case, losing 2 Dragoons and some health on its main army. This is how the AI gets you. It just outspeeds you in these crucial situations. I mean, we see that the Protoss player is trying to prevent the Terran from taking its 3rd gas here. Looks like it's adding cannons here. Interesting choice considering the fact that the siege tanks can hit that from the high ground, but it bolsters the Dragoons here. Nice SCV repair here, but it's not enough to hold off the pressure from the Dragoons. And the Terran player taking the mineral only in the meantime, which is probably the sensible play. And honestly, I'm surprised that so few Dragoons controlled well can keep Krasio occupied in its main base and natural, preventing it from moving out. I mean, look at this. It's great reaction from the Protoss player, recognizing that the Observer was getting attacked, pushing a little bit forward to force the Goliaths back, saving that Observer for later. Another scan comes down. That Observer may go down now. No, it does not quite yet. Another siege up is going to take down another Dragoon. Will it take down another? Not yet. More iterative pushing from Krasio here, pushing forward. But by this point, the Protoss player up to 10 gateways in this base, adding gateways in this base. This is kind of where you want to be in this situation. Even adding a pylon here to prevent any expansion, preventing any expansion this way too. Just trying to keep the Terran on 2 gases is the name of the game here. And as I mentioned before, it is more difficult to push vertically on this map. The Protoss player is coming from the side, demonstrating exactly what I was talking about earlier, how easy it is to maneuver in the middle when you can just flank this way and come from the bridges this way. Probably awaiting for the Terran player to make its way to the place where the production facilities are closest to it, and actually opting for a counterattack, but the Terran player seems to have sniffed it out. The siege tanks coming back home. A lot of mines here, but it's not going to be enough, and they're not crucially not in the important place, which is right here to protect the third base. The reaction is going to be crucial here from the Terran player. Siege up on top of the mines here. This siege up makes no sense whatsoever. Perhaps not recognizing where it is. Sieging up on top of its own mines, a classic error for players of all levels. Some famous games and moments in Brood War history have come from that, and actually it looks like this third base might get taken down. Great play from the Protoss player, buying itself more time, but it should be noted that the army supply for the Terran is now greater, and it is going to get tougher and tougher going forward. Whenever a Terran has a supply advantage, you want to have the significant production advantage. With 10 gateways against 5 factories, you do have that, but in a human versus human match, at this point, the Terran player would likely have about 8 or 9 factories, maybe even more, considering the fact that it is limited to 2 gas production, so it would need to be heavier on the Vulture production in this case. And now the push has arrived at the natural base of the Protoss. The Protoss, waiting for the opportunity to flank from the other side, does not have enough at the front here, needs definitely way more zealous to try to contest this bridge. Coming from the back, no mine coverage on the what I would consider the most important area, which is this arc over here to protect the backside of the siege tanks. Siege tanks mostly unsieged, push coming from both sides, but the bridges make it hard to navigate. Defensive matrix on that siege tank keeps it alive a little bit longer. Now it's only Dragoons pushing at the back, but with this amount of siege tanks, I feel like it's not enough. Another round of macro comes out for the Protoss player. Floating 4,000 minerals, definitely needed to have these gateways active earlier. And the army has been decimated. 4 army, only those Dragoons that you see on the screen are the active army for the Protoss player here. 50 supply advantage for the Terran, weathering the storm, and actually taking a mineral only here instead of worrying about this base here or retaking its main here. Interesting decision from the AI here, but this is dire straits for the Protoss player. Likely to lose its natural. At this point, generally what you would see a human player do, or run its probes back to the main base. The main is still heavy on probes. Yes, we see the probes running back now. If it had anticipated that it would lose that engagement, it might have made more sense to transfer the probes here in order to saturate this base better and take on more bases here, but we see now Krazio is keeping tabs on the expansion rate of the Protoss player, placing a mine here where the Nexus would be, placing a mine here, where it's a little bit far away for vision, but it should be aware of any movements. Let's see, and there we go. Takes some damage on those Dragoons. This Nexus is most assuredly going to go down. The pressure from the Terran, too great now. The Protoss catching up in army supply, but still half of its opponent. And the Terran now taking its third gas here at the 9 o'clock position. Probably the more standard choice in this scenario. The Protoss looking to do some damage with a counterattack. It suspects that there's an expansion this way, but actually there is not. Did not send the observer out to see it. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there's been quite limited vision from this Protoss player. Unable to keep tabs on the expansion of the Terran opponent. Just kind of searching with its whole army here and finding this base relatively undefended. Only one siege tank here is going to go aim for the command center, which is probably the correct move. SCV is now realizing the danger that they're going to run away. Not going to take heavy losses there, and not that damaging to the Terran player considering the fact that it has a command center here. The Terran slowly pushing into the main base. The SCVs are actually trapped here. I think that maybe they don't know what to do because of the presence of the cannons here. They're not sure how to proceed. Siege tank is coming in to defend the SCVs and is going to take down these cannons as well, opening it up for another gas expansion for the Terran player. A siege tank present here as well. Great mine coverage on the lead up to that position. Now the Protoss army is going to recognized that maybe that was not the place where it expanded, taking heavy damage from mines, but there is going to be some army here. Is it going to be enough? No, the mine drag takes out a vulture and a siege tank. The siege tank's on the way to defending this base. The Protoss trying to deny yet another base. And is it going to be enough? I don't think so. Now with the army pulling back here, there's even more army coming out from this base. Now trying to continue the pressure on this third base. Great play, heads up play from the Protoss player, who is unfortunately going to lose a lot of workers here. These workers are idle. But it would have been so much more effective to have them here or here and allow for an expansion. He's going to lose a lot of his tech as well. I'm looking to see when the Protoss player will replace it. He needs another gas. I mean, he is at 6,000 minerals, 2,500 gas. Should be noted. But he does need that tech in order to continue to produce Dragoons, in order to have any chance of teching to higher level tech, such as Arbiters or Templar. But it should be noted that the Terran is actually broke. Look at this, 269 minerals, 276 5, and no mineral expansion. This base was the last base here, and what did it spend its last money on? I don't see a command center up anywhere. And is the Protoss player gonna pull this off thanks to its bank and that dire last-ditch effort to deny the Terran expansions? This is an incredible game from the Protoss player. What a heads-up play from the Protoss player in this situation, taking another base here with the gas expansion. I'm a little bit suspicious of this, to be honest with you. I mean, it doesn't need that much gas, considering the fact that it can't produce any advanced tech anymore, having lost its cybernetics core. It actually is not producing another cybernetics core. Where are all these Dragoons coming from? Is that... Where is there a cybernetics core? I'm so confused. And taking the other main as well. This Protoss player is looking to seal the deal. The Terran player not ever able to get enough minerals, mining the extremely long way. Not able to get a command center, and its lead is slowly diminishing. The army count continuing to rise. The worker count rising for the Protoss player as well. And even though it has lost its main base and all of its tech, it is possibly in a better position than I would have anticipated in this case. The army almost equal now. The Protoss player doesn't need more workers. The Terran player certainly doesn't, considering the fact that it doesn't have enough minerals to even take a new expansion. It's going to be a question of whether or not the Terran player is going to expand, or whether it's going to hold this push. Let's speed up a little bit. I just realized I've been going at 1 speed. These games have been so fantastic. I had so much more planned for today, to be honest with you. But these first 2 games have been so incredible that I'm honestly, I don't want to say speechless, obviously, because I'm still talking, but the great effort from everyone involved here. And the army does get taken out. Is there an expansion up yet for the Terran? No, still long-distance mining with seemingly all 50 of its workers. And it has been enough. I mean, it still has the army advantage by 10 supply. Will this push be devastating for the Protoss player? The Protoss player is notably almost mined out of this base, and those probes will be relatively isolated and surrounded by enemy units. This game is intense. This base is now getting taken out as well. No production of workers here. There is worker production here, but they are not mining. The Protoss player down to 1 active mining base against the Terrans, I guess like 0.3 or 0.2. This is the efficiency is getting. The Terran has the supply advantage by 40. It is now on top of the gateways. There is a significant gateway count here. It's scouts now out on the map. What are you kidding me? There's not any Goliaths or any anti-air save for the 1 Wraith that is here. The probes making a dire run to the other base, but also in, letting the Terran know that it has that base. There is 1 gateway there. Are these scouts going to really be the deciding move? Is this really going to be... I mean, scouts infamous for being one of the worst units in Brood War, especially without upgrades. Are they going to be able to hold off this push and keep this Protoss alive here when the Terran does not have enough resources to produce Goliaths? That's what it's looking like. And the Terran still has not made another command center, has given up on taking another base. These 2 Dragoons stranded in a sea of mines here. Mines basically everywhere, and now these scouts are rampaging around the map looking for victims to take down. And the Protoss is now on 2 fully mining bases, and it held on by the skin of their teeth. The army count's still not catching up. The worker count is catching up little by little, but as mentioned before, the Terran player never quite mustering the units necessary to make a command center. I mean, the command center would have been so crucial just a few moments ago, but now we have another push coming in, this time with Goliaths, with vessels, with a Wraith as well to provide anti-air coverage. D-Matrix on the Goliath on top of that. It's running a little bit too forward with the Goliaths. It needs those to defend against the scouts. It's going to take out the new base from the Terran, the Protoss player. The Protoss player trying to hide its probes in the corner. The Terran finally manages to make enough, to save enough minerals for an expansion here. It's so far away from where it's currently mining, but better than nowhere. And geez, what a game. The Terran, the Protoss player trying to expand itself too, recognizing the fact that its economy has been halved once again. All those and notably, the Terran player has not discovered that these workers are here. These workers can sneak another expansion again. The Protoss player does have enough eco for it, but having incurred such losses so consistently, now with a Scout Dragoon combination, no observers on the map is going to make it incredibly difficult to push in here. There are mines, there is a significant number of siege tanks, and now the Goliaths were enough to take down the unupgraded scouts. And oh man, with the loss of those Dragoons, you have to feel for this Protoss player who put in such a tremendous effort in this match. Again, I did not expect to only be able to do two or three games today. I had so much more planned today, but these games have been so incredibly fantastic and active, and it's just a wonder to see. And with this being the last base of the Protoss player, you have to suspect that this might be the final push from the Terran player, who barely made it. Actually, another dire attempt from the Protoss player. 1 Dragoon, 1 Zealot taking out that tank, starting to slow down the mining, but it's not enough. The Vultures and the Goliath do arrive, and now this push has spelled out death for our Protoss player, who is now no longer mining, no longer producing. And what a close game. What an insane close game we just saw here, folks. Cheers to Cinders, cheers to Krasio for giving us a fantastic game. And I will let you know that the next game is a rematch. So I don't know if we'll have... I did not think that I would struggle for time in casting these replays, but given the quality that we've seen so far, I think that it's more than earned. This is the Krasio hour, officially. And I wonder where the name comes from. To me, it seems like Crazy O, maybe, or Crazy Zero. Either way, these games have been crazy, and in the bottom left here we have Cinders spawning as the orange Protoss, and in the top left we have Krasio spawning as the teal Terran, once again on circuit breakers. And it's going to be interesting. Oh, is it going for a BBS? No, not this time. It checked the middle for cheese. Again, safe play from Krasio. It proved successful last game, more or less. In this case, it is scouting very, very early, taking an economic deficit in order to be safe going forward. However, interestingly enough, it was up in workers. It looks like Cinders is again going for, it looks like a 13 Nexus here. Should be noted that 12 Nexus is much more standard nowadays, as far as I'm aware. A gateway placement right afterwards is probably going to be Gas. Cyber again with the follow-up, knowing that it was safe. But, hold on. Hold the phone. That's 2 barracks. And the late scout from Protoss, I mean, having to cross scout and then down scout, it's not going to arrive here in time to see that it's a 2 racks play, if the positioning from the Marines is sufficient. Let's see how this develops. We do see the Cybernetics coming up. No Zealot out, notably speaking, and 2 racks pressure is going to be enough to potentially do some significant damage when this with this greedy play from the Protoss player. The question is, will the Protoss player suspect something? How many Marines will it see? If it sees 6-7 Marines, it might suspect a FD push, a strong FD push technically, but at this juncture, it should recognize that 8 Marines is more, or 6 or 7 Marines is more than you can reasonably produce from one barrier. So maybe it is already aware that it is going to be bio. I'm not quite sure. If it was aware, it's going to be more aware now that it's pressuring with this Dragoon. Maybe still unsure about the situation. Let's see the pressure. Oh, the stim is going to give away the reality of the situation, and this Dragoon already nearly down to his shields. 2 Dragoons against 6 M&M. The Marine medic movement not quite cohesive, but notably 2 Dragoons with a medic against 1 medic would still be enough to do some significant damage. Now we have 4 Dragoons, finally 4 Dragoons, the critical number, in order to snipe Marines, one-shot them with a good cohesive volley. 1 Marine does go down, but now the Dragoon goes down as well, and now that it's below the critical number, it's not going to be able to do enough damage. Now that we have 5, is it going to be able to hold? 1 Marine goes down, 2 Dragoons go down. This one is definitely low. The shields are no longer active. So many probes going down. This bio push, this vengeance from the Terran player Krazio, the Terran AI, is going to take down Cinders, who had played so valiantly in the last game, was so close to victory when Krazio refused to expand. But now with DTs out on the map, has the Terran player expanded all its scans? It expended 1 for sure to take down. Oh, here's another one. Is the DT going to go down? No, not yet. 2 probes left, 1 probe left. Enough minerals for a lot more, but with 1 DT, is it going to be able to pummel down these Marines before scan is finished? Is it abusing the AI? But with the Wraith now on the field, it's not going to be able to take down that Wraith with just DTs. It's trying to rely. Oh my god, made 2 probes. Oh no. Oh, this is so hard to watch. Oh god. No anti-air. This DT doing so much work, but unfortunately it's not enough. And Krazio, I'm not sure if it was adaptation, if it was just randomly pulled, but all I can say is Krazio definitely won that in convincing fashion and punished the Protoss player for its incredibly greedy opening. Generally, what you want to do when you're going Nexus first, if you want to be safe, is to open with a Zealot, maybe even 2 Zealots, before going into Dragoon production. But this Protoss player opted to go straight into Dragoons, and as a result, it did not have enough army and did not have the control necessary to take down the M&M control and numbers from Krazio. What a fantastic series, best of 3 between these 2 players. And I mean, this one was clearly a lot faster than the previous one. And I think I want to cut it here. I think that this was a fantastic series. It highlighted the strengths of Krazio. It showed some fantastic heads-up play from our Protoss player, and it showed us the weakness, the risk involved with going for such a greedy opener against a Terran AI. Who would go 2 racks bio? No human, certainly, would go 2 racks bio in this case. At least no one above, like, 1000 MMR or something. No one above D rank would go for 2 racks opener and have it work so well against such a greedy opener from the Protoss player. Maybe it is that adaptation. I don't want to venture too many guesses, but definitely a fantastic series, and the first game was just out of this world. Thank you so much, Krazio, for your work and for the suggestions here. I'm gonna leave it at that. I think that we had a great session here with these replays. Cheers to Krazio. Krazio went 3-0 over the course of this broadcast, so obviously well done. But it hasn't been easy. It has definitely been difficult, and it took a lot of work to get this far for both the author, the AI, and to get the 3-0. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this broadcast. This has been Chobo Swaggins, aka Jealous on Team Liquid, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you all have great health, a great day, and that all your dreams come true. Take care.